My name is John Bruce. I'm from a company called Performex, and we signed up to do this presentation, gosh, months ago. And after signing up and looking at the agenda, I was like, wow, we're going to be the only non-technical presenter at this whole thing, I think. So we're a company that does work with a lot of innovative companies, but we focus on helping organizations and leaders grow, nurture their folks, drive innovation, and become excellent. So, if you have any questions around identity, accessibility, security, I can't help you. But what I can help you do is identify what a great leader is for your organization and what a good coach is, and define excellence, and then try to move all of your employees there. And we think that's very important. So we do a lot of work with technical folks. And I have a technical background. I'm an engineer by education. I spent 25 years in the corporate world and made my career through leadership. Realized pretty quickly that there's a big difference between solving problems and leading people as an engineer, and got really passionate about coaching, and then eventually bought into this company that my brother owns. So here we are, and appreciate you guys being here. Never know how many people are going to show up for a HR presentation at a technical conference. So what we're going to talk about today is really the role coaching plays in your organization and innovation, and some common reasons why a lot of leaders and managers don't like to coach, or they just don't see the need. And then we actually have a 4-step coaching process that is very easy to implement, relatively speaking, because it's not an easy thing for people to learn how to do. And then we have some strategies on how you can get buy-in from your employees on how to have more coaching and development in the organization. So how do we motivate people? So I found this little organizational chart on the internet. I had to swipe it, so I'll be full disclosure here. I stole this. I thought it was really funny. The first step in motivating people to innovate is don't demotivate them. So saw this chart. I don't know about you, but I immediately started putting names in of people I know or I've worked with in the chart, and kind of went, wow, this is pretty funny. And then I saw at the bottom the innovative position that was always open, and I think that's the case because the person that is a good innovator probably left the organization. So, but this actually has some good merit, because if we want to have a culture or employees or leaders that are strong at creating good innovators, and a team that innovates, and individuals that innovate, we need to have a good definition of what that is and what it isn't. And what we often do with a lot of organizations, we go, well, if you want to become innovative, what are the key competencies and behaviors you need to have? So this is kind of playing off some of the stuff. If you guys were in Sarah's presentation a second ago, it's kind of playing off of hers a little bit. What makes a great innovative organization? And that's going to be different for each one of the organizations we work with. But what we do is we define those. And a lot of times we start with who's good at it. Who's excellent at having an innovative team, who's done a lot of good development, who's had a lot of great results, and why? How are they doing that? And then we try to define that, and then we employ coaching to move everybody to that level. So why is coaching important? It drives your culture, it drives your retention, and almost everybody's got issues retaining good talent these days because there's a lot of competition out there. It drives good building relationships. It also helps you manage your creativity and how you react to good ideas. So hopefully you see the tie there. Good example though, talk about culture. What does coaching have to do with culture? Well, what is a culture of a company? Is that important or not? Yes, most people are nodding. What drives culture? The employees, but leadership. We like to say the experiences, right? You come into a place, you have different experiences, you start kind of in your mind going, okay, if I do this, this is how people are going to react, this is kind of the culture. Those experiences are driven by the behaviors of the people in the culture. And oftentimes what we need to do is, if you're a good coach, we need to change the behaviors or reinforce the good behaviors that drive innovation. So that's why coaching is, for example, in that one area is important from a cultural standpoint. Obviously, retaining talent, most people come to an organization, they want to grow, they want to get a good experience that they can take with them in their career, they want to move to the next level. Coaching obviously plays a big role in that. So you're not coaching just for performance, but you're also coaching for improvements. So hopefully that gives you the business case for why coaching is important. Now, the problem we have, or the challenge we have often, is that we promote from within, which is a good thing. But oftentimes, at least this is what I found, is because I was an engineer, you're pretty good at engineering, you seem to have pretty good people skills, boom, you could become the boss. But that doesn't really make you a great leader. And coaching oftentimes is a challenge for somebody that's been promoted from within. They're often leading their peers, and that's always a challenge. How do we overcome that obstacle of, hey, I used to work with these people, we used to go have drinks together after work, and now I'm trying to coach them. There are certain people who are very uncomfortable coaching because they don't want to be the deliverer of bad news. They don't want to be that person that sets people off. They don't want to damage the relationship, so they don't go there. And what happens is performance issues aren't addressed, or people don't grow to the next level and they leave. We often have problems with just relationship building. That's not always a strong point for people from a technical background, and they need to grow that capability. And it's really important to grow that. We're going to be doing a presentation later this week about influencing, because you have all these great ideas you want to have happen, right? But you got to have the right relationships to sell those ideas to the rest of the organization to actually make it happen. So we're going to be doing that presentation later on. And then finally, a lot of us who came from the technical background love to solve problems. And what happens sometimes with our teams, we jump in and try to solve the problem for them without letting them solve the problem, because that's how we got satisfaction out of doing the engineering work. And that takes a step change for the leader to recognize, hey, I'm no longer an engineer, I'm no longer a technical person, I need to let my team solve that. Oh, sorry. And that takes a behavioral shift from a manager standpoint. They have to recognize my job now is to lead, develop, grow the group, not to solve problems unless I need to jump in and help, but do it in a way where coaching is important. So those are some of the obstacles that we have to overcome if we're going to grow coaching in the organization. One of the issues out there sometimes is just they're not aware, why don't people coach? Because they don't know how. We don't train them, we don't create the skills, we don't give them the tools needed. And there's some simple solutions for that. It's not easy to become a coach, but it can happen. And with the right structure, it can take place. There's two types of coaching that we like to talk about. One is coaching for performance and helping a person be successful in the role and get great results. And then the other is coaching for development. That is really growing the person, growing the talent in the organization, preparing them for the future, helping them achieve their goals in their career. So talking a little bit about coaching for performance. And we like to use a scientific approach to everything we do, neuroscience, and so forth. There's two things you can do as a manager when you're giving feedback. You can create cortisol or dopamine. Is everybody familiar with those two chemicals? Yeah. So what your brain releases, right? So the cortisol approach is, why'd you screw up? And the reaction the person has is stress, right? And what is that? Short term, does anybody know what the reaction is? There's a little bit of a circle the wagons. There's there's a fight or flight. In the worst case, you may even get what you call an amygdala hijack, where the person just totally shuts down, doesn't even want to be part of you. But what it typically does is it creates I want to shut down, I want to kind of become more reclusive, I'm not going to be as open, In the future, when there's an issue, I'm not going to communicate it as quickly, which is totally opposite of what you want in an innovative organization. Innovative organization, you want the problems to surface as soon as possible, right? So that the team can solve them. So if the manager has created a culture of fear, this can have some serious repercussions as far as innovation. In the long term, obviously, there's some health impacts with stress. On the other hand, there's dopamine. And the same feedback delivered can be done in a manner that creates a sense of achievement and a very positive feeling, a high, if you will, and that's what dopamine is. It creates an openness, it creates camaraderie, it creates a will for collaboration, all positive things when you talk about teamwork and collaboration and innovation. So we often do a little example where we give a team some feedback that they're doing in one of our work. We do leadership programs, and we're in a workshop. We go, hey, you got to deliver this feedback. We don't have that much time because we only got 20 minutes, but typically it's kind of like, hey, you're in charge of a produce company, and your produce manager is shipping out fruit to different places, and 3 of the orders went very well. One of the orders was they jumped through hoops, and they made it happen on a very short-term notice, and the quality was good. And then the third outcome was there was some bananas, they showed up late, and they were bruised. So how do you give feedback? So what the cortisol approach is, what the heck happened with the bananas? What happened? And if that happens again, you're out of here. That's the extreme example. On the other side, the approach could be, hey, let's talk about the bananas. I got a call from the client or the customer, the bananas were bruised and late. Tell me about what happened. And just, step back, let the person tell you the story. They may have already recognized there was a problem. They may have already come up with a solution. And, the whole dialogue could change, and it could be more of a questioning. Oh, I hear you found out that the clerk received the produce late and it was damaged. You had to make a decision whether you should send it or not. If something's better than nothing, you decided to do that. You've already implemented some new checks. So the next time it happens, we'll check ahead of time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then that can be a very positive experience for the person. So one of the things that a good coach does when they're giving feedback is they not only think about what they have to tell the person, but they also think about the outcome. What's the desired outcome? How do I want that person to leave this conversation? Do I want them to leave, feeling pumped up about it, or do I want them to feel fear? And oftentimes that's not taken into account when the feedback's being delivered. So that's one of the things that we talk about when we talk about coaching for performance. On a longer term basis, and probably more important, though both are important and there is some overlap, is coaching for development. And GROW is a very good acronym for a process that coaches can learn. It's obviously it's a good acronym. You can remember it. It's the steps for developing people. And then there's a handful of key techniques that a good coach can employ, and they're on this slide. So GROW stands for goal. What's your goal? What do you want to become? So if I'm coaching someone for performance, where do you want to be down the road? If I'm talking to, oftentimes I'm talking to a manager that wants to become a better leader. Hey, I want to become a more inspirational speaker that engages the team, gets them excited about work, and gets a high level of business results and conveys the message in a way that's inspirational. That goal needs to be very aspirational, inspirational to them, so they have an emotional attachment to it. The reality is where they are now. So oftentimes we'll do a 360 feedback or a personality assessment to let the person know, well, here's where I want to be, here's where I am now. And then what are the obstacles and options I have to get from point A to point B? And then finally building the plan. So that's the process. Now what the coach does is the coach has to get commitment from the person. Are you committed to doing this? This is not an easy, we're talking behavioral change. We're talking months of work. We're talking about growing a person's emotional intelligence, becoming very self-aware of what they're working on and what their emotions are in the moment and managing that. If they have a fear of giving feedback, for example, they have to push through that, okay? They have to become more comfortable providing negative feedback. Or if they have a natural tendency to want to have conflict when that's not always the best approach, or always have to win the argument, those kinds of things. They have to be aware of that and change that, and that's where the emotional intelligence piece comes in. The person has to become very good at asking questions. A good coach, if you don't take anything away from this presentation, but one thing is, if you want to be a good coach, learn to ask good questions. It's kind of the Socratic way of teaching, right? You ask questions, you get the person to think through the solution versus telling them the solution. And that's important because if we want people to own the solution for their own development, we can't say, okay, well, read this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, or whatever you want, or this article, watch this podcast, write in your journal every day. You have to go, no, how will you develop? What will you do to improve? And how can I help you? But who has to own it? It has to be the person, right? Keep a journal. How are you going to keep? How are you going to manage that every day? How are you going to keep it in front of you? So a good question asker makes a good coach. Spacing is another important concept. A good coach, how many times you've been to a leadership conference where you went to go see an inspiring speaker and you're all fired up and then you go back to work and what happens? Re-entry. Yeah, re-entry, right? You're back in the whirlwind of a good coach does spacing, so they check in every couple of weeks, and they understand that it's a long-term process. We're talking months of repetitive work on this to make the behavior change happen. And they understand that, and they do periodic check-ins with spacing. And again, they focus on helping the person grow their self-awareness and then managing that. And so there's a lot of deep-rooted emotional intelligence. If you're not familiar with that, I'd be glad to tell you more about it afterwards. So that's our coaching model and some of the key competencies that a coach employs to be successful. Now, just in closing, I've got about 7 key points. And I've got a picture, the previous presenter, Sarah, talked about having a rock star group for an identity team. That's exactly, it was a perfect lead-in for this. What is a rock star? Literally define it. So what are the top 6 competencies for a great identity team? Collaboration, accountability, communication, whatever they may be. And what does that look like in the terms of your company? Literally list out the behaviors. And then list out what it doesn't look like. You can steal that organizational chart I had up there, but saying no, or no, that's a dumb idea, or those kinds of things. Literally go, this is excellence, this is very poor. Or challenge, if you will, whatever term you want to use to make it sound a little bit better, but literally define it out. And this is what those pictures look like. And then you've got this model of excellence that people can judge themselves against and go, well, pretty good at communication, but I'm not so good at, collaborating with others sometimes. Sometimes I want to be the one that wins, right? Because my idea is the best. Right? We did some work with an IT group at a major bank, and we asked each one of them, they were all leaders. How many used to write code? They all raise their hand, right? When you see somebody else's code, how does it look? Oh, it looks like crap. I don't write code, so I don't know. I was a mechanical engineer. But anyway, why? Well, it just doesn't look like mine. Is it effective? Yeah. Does it do the job? Yeah. But it just isn't the way I would do it. Okay, well, sometimes when you're a leader, you got to let go of that. The other person's maybe just as good. It's just not what you came up with. But anyway, getting back to the point, define what excellence is, what it isn't. Create a consistent coaching process. The GROW model is an example. There's a lot of them out there. We like that one because it's very simple. It's not as complex as some of the other things out there. Work hard for every leader in your organization to become a coach. Make that a must. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, how you can do that. Make talent development a top priority. I work for a company that we had our annual review, and we had 6 competencies as leaders. And we couldn't get an exceeds overall unless we had an exceeds in the talent development area. So in other words, if we weren't developing the talent on our team, we couldn't get exceeds expectations at a rating.
What are some metrics there in talent development?
We would have a talent management process, and certain people are rated, it's a 9-box type rating, and you had to have, that's one way you could do it, is that do you have somebody that's ready now, replacement for you? It was one of the common things. If your team you should have someone on your team that could take your place. And if you couldn't answer that question, then you need to take a really close look at who's on your team and go, how do I make that happen? And that was sometimes led to some pretty tough decisions there, but that was the onus that was on us as leaders. So it really made me think a lot about things a little bit differently. One of the things we talk about is a good leader spends 30% of their time developing the team. And I think a lot of people immediately, when we do these leadership workshops, they go, oh, there's no way. There's no way I can do that.
100%.
Yeah.
We all work 130%.
Well, but then we start going, well, how good are your meetings? And we get how much time do you waste spending in meetings? How good are they? Can you delegate more? Could you set aside time on a regular basis to have coaching sessions and so forth? And then they find, hey, with the right type of priorities and the right type of management, I don't have to work longer hours. I need to develop the capability of the team so they can do some of the work I'm doing. Or I'm delving down into stuff I shouldn't be delving down to. I should be delegating that. So it's a good thought-provoking thing there. Make personal development. Now, this is on the employee side. So make sure your employees know, hey, you're going to be coached. And we want you to develop. This is what's in it for you. We want this to be an experience where you grow and further your career, and you can develop some great results in the role you've got. But part of your job is going to be to learn and grow, and not just come in and go through the treadmill every day. If you have to use sports or other analogies to help people understand how important coaching is, the greatest athletes in the world, or the greatest singers in the world, or the greatest performers, to pick whatever passion gets the attention of your team, they use coaches. Greatest actress, actor, singer, whatever. And obviously athletics is a great example that the people are at their pinnacle of sport have coaches. So who are we to think that we don't need one? And then finally, here's what's in it for you. If we do coaching and development, it'll help you grow, and whether it's in our company or another company, help you grow and become a leader and further your career, or be more effective in the role you've got now. So that's the content I had to cover, and I'm open for any questions you guys have.
Have you had experience coaching tough technical teams? Right?
So describe tough.
Think of, maybe an architect who really knows their stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but is terrible at documenting.
Okay.
I'm sure nobody else has come across this stuff.
I managed, now this was more of capital project management and a different skill set, but I managed 24 engineers at one point in my career with Kimberly-Clark, so I can definitely relate to the lack of documentation. But yeah, I think if you can get the person to formulate the importance of that in their heads, so they recognize that's part of the, have them describe what is an excellent architect, and see if they come up, here's my solution, or the approach I would take. See if they come up with documentation as one of the competencies, right? Yeah. So it's going to be, designing the system and so forth. And then if they don't say documentation, go, well, how does documentation? I mean, don't you want to leave the rationale and
evidence of your greatness?
Yeah. If you got to play that card, go for it. Yeah, I mean, gosh, you conceived the book, but you didn't write it. That's what you have to do, and get them to define that and recognize, oh, that is a very important part of that. And then have them develop a strategy of how can they create time to make sure they get that done. And then have a partner or someone, a spotter or a person to hold them accountable. So that would be kind of some quick ideas.
I have a second quick question too.
Sure.
So when I'm working with, I have one individual on my team who is very sharp, but had been kind of heading towards architecture in his previous roles. When he came to work for me, I said, I don't need architects, I need a hands-on person. Understood the role completely when he signed up, came in hands-on. Unfortunately, the couple of projects that I put him on, they were towards the tail end.
Okay.
And almost finishing up. And he felt like whatever he was saying was no one was listening because there's no time. We've gone 26 miles. We're seeing the finish line of the marathon. But he seems to be having a really hard time working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the MO I have from 10 years of references for this person.
So I think is it the position that the person was put in because it was the tail end and gosh, you didn't have a lot of buy-in on the front, or is it that'd be the first question I'd have. Is it a behavioral issue they need to work on from a coaching standpoint? And I'd have to say, well,
Yeah, I think
what's the evidence? Are there some
I put him on
interaction problems?
Yeah, I put on 3 different projects so far, and he's on this 3rd one now, and it's. I don't think that it's anymore the tail end stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's he feels like his way has been the right way for the last 10 years, and we're not listening.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of personality assessments you can give this type of person, and we use one that's called FIRE-OB. It looks at control, inclusion, and affection, and it's a very helpful tool to help people recognize. And he may have a little bit of a control problem. And what it does is helps people recognize that's a limiter for his ability to influence. I'm assuming it was a male. I think you said that. Yeah, okay. So you have to gather data to show the evidence to the person. And third party, sometimes you have to do that with an assessment that they take. There's no right or wrong answer, but Myers-Briggs, DISC, you guys have probably seen those types of things. They're very helpful. So hopefully that helps. But
So I've got a question around trying to figure out how to take engineering managers who've been like lead developers their whole life and understand that, 1, that's not their job anymore.
Yeah.
And 2, they may literally not care about coaching, but they don't really believe that.
Yeah.
But it might be apparent to a lot of folks like in their organization that they don't do it in general. If you don't do it, you probably don't care about it. How do you make it obvious that this is a really important thing to do to folks that maybe you don't do it?
Yeah, and let me go back to this GROW model. Oops. Well, I messed it up. But if you remember, reality was the second step. I kind of use the same example with an assessment. But if you combine a good 360 where you define what a great leader is, and that's where if your organization is taking time to say, well, these 5 or 6 key competencies are very important, and coaching is one of them, or delegation would be another good one. For engineering manager, because they oftentimes go, well, if I don't do it, it's not going to be done right? So you define those things, and then if you do this survey, and they'll get that feedback, and then if you can accompany that with a personality assessment that illustrates their over controlling, micromanaging aspect, they'll see it, and then they'll slowly come with the right support, they'll recognize that is really limiting their capability. A lot, and then the other parts of the 360 may be strategic thinking and the things that the leader should be doing. They'll recognize that, wow, excellence as a leader is not solving the day-to-day problems that the team's doing. That's what I've hired them to do. And then if that doesn't work, there's some other techniques you can do where you can kind of go, well, you were an engineer. How do you like it when people were managing what you did? You put them in the other shoes. It's called a perspective shift. But those are the types of questions you become good at if you work on coaching. So hopefully that answered the question. Yeah.
Looking for techniques, you got a person that says, I want to do that. I want to do something different. I want to be an engineer. I want to be an architect. I want to be an individual contributor. I want to be a manager. Whatever, right? They want to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And you you put them in a position to be successful doing that other thing that in their mind they want to do, and they just don't do it well, right? And months go by. Like what techniques would you use to just? You had reality on the grow.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's what you mean by reality, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's-
just because you see that guy being successful, you're not doing the things that
Yeah.
he or she's doing. Like what techniques, without me inducing too much cortisol, would you suggest?
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I think you've got to say, where's a great, if you're a manager, what does a great manager look like? And how do you compare yourself to that? And if they start not talking about the truth, you gotta go, well, what about this instance where you did X, Y, Z? And you've got to just, build their self-awareness that they've got a gap they need to fill, and they need to build a plan to get there. As I keep kind of repeating, but the process is that way, where their goal is to be this leader and be successful in the role. The reality is they don't have all the right skills and behaviors to do that. And you've got to make them see that in some form or fashion, whether it's gathering feedback, your observations, different types of assessments, and then getting them to realize, hey, there's a gap, and I need to fill that gap. Or maybe I'm not right for the job. Maybe the individual contributor role is right, but I give them a chance first, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I think we're out of time. All right. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good job, John.
Thanks.